Now, after all the FA Cup chaos and the transfer plans video I made earlier in the week, I've had a bit more time to think about my team and my transfer decisions. So barring any more Champions League disasters, here is my team selection for Game Week 28. Alright, so we'll run through my team quickly again as it got on in Game Week 27. I scored 50 points, which kind of average really, and I'm on 19k overall. So yeah, I'd say that's a pretty decent rank. I'm pretty happy with that rank at this stage of the season. You can see on my team there, I've gone through, the points each player has scored in previous videos. So I'm not going to go through the scores, but I do have, three main issues in my team at the moment. I've got Cunha, who is suspended, I believe, until the beginning of April for 4 games. So he's going to have to go. I've got Isak, who is not absolutely ruled out, but he's certainly an injury doubt. He got subbed off early in the FA Cup. So there's a question mark as to whether he's going to be ready to go against West Ham for Game Week 28. I've got a fair few players that are blanking in Game Week 29. So I've covered Cunha, Isak, and I've got one more, Lewis Hall as well, who, is carrying an injury at the moment as well. So, there's lots of juggling around to do with this team with players that blank in 29 and also currently injured. So, like I mentioned, first up, I think we have to deal with the injuries and the players that blank in Game Week 29. So we've got 4 teams blanking, right? Aston Villa, Liverpool, Newcastle, Crystal Palace. I'll just go back to my team as it was lining up, or as it finished in Game Week 27, right? So Aston Villa and Liverpool are the 2 teams I have that blank, basically. Coverage in my team of players that blank. And I've got 3 players that are blanking. I've got Newcastle as well, right? So I've got Isak and Hall, who are also blanking and potentially injured. So Trent and Salah from Liverpool, Rodgers, Isak and Hall. I've repeated myself there, forgive me. I think I have to make a priority call on which players I actually sell going into Game Week 29. By the way, I'm pretty much nailed on a chip strategy of dead-ending my team into Game Week 29, using my wild card either in Game Week 30 or 31, depending on when we get a preliminary double game week announcement for either 34 or 36. We'll see what happens with the announcement. So I'm going to dead end my team, use my free transfers to deal with it, and then wildcard. So I have to sell some of these players with a blank on my wildcard. Salah, I've got too much money kind of tied up in him, really. If I got rid of Salah, I lose about $1 million in terms of money in the bank, which I think is too big of a loss to cope with. So I think I'm just going to bench him come Game Week 29. Trent, I don't actually have all that much value tied up in him, so I could definitely sell him. Rodgers, and also I think with Rodgers, longer term, I'd rather have other players in my team, which we'll talk about in a second. So ahead of Game Week 29, I'll definitely look to get rid of him. Who else we got? Isak, it all depends on his fitness. And with the way the FPL price rise system works, he's gone up by basically $1 million since I bought him. And this is one of the, I think, points that I don't like about the FPL or FPL game in general, is when a player goes up by 0.2 million, you only gain 0.1. If that makes sense, you don't gain the exact amount that they increase in value by. I'd quite like the profit and loss to be equal, but it is what it is. So if I sell Isak, I serve to lose 0.5 million of money in the bank. And whilst that's not that much, it could, I don't know, it's on the fence really. I think $1 million that I've got tied up in Salah is too much to sell him. But $500,000, particularly if he's going to be fit for like Game Week 30, is a bit too much, because I'll sell him 1 week and then just wildcard him back immediately because I want him again, because he's likely to, he's got a double game week in 32. So I'm on the fence as to whether I'll actually get rid of Isak for Game Week 29. Lewis Hall, I think he's probably going to go, and then I can always wildcard him back in. I don't have all that much money tied up in him, to be honest, so he can go for someone else. In fact, I'm actually going to transfer him out in Game Week 28, and we'll talk about his replacements now. All right, so what I've got here is a list of the top defenders for expected points for the next 3 weeks. As I think, I've got quite a bit of cash in the bank, so I can afford to take out Lewis Hall for pretty much any defender in the game. And I'm looking at other defenders that I could potentially buy. And right now, I think Gabriel's probably number 1. At least it's between Gabriel and Guardiola, most likely. Gabriel, I'm just comparing the fixtures. I think they're fairly even, to be fair. It's a shame that Gabriel doesn't have the best fixture in blank Game Week 29. He's got Chelsea at home, but I actually say the shame he doesn't have the best fixture. Chelsea have not been playing all that well from an attacking perspective recently. So that's not actually as bad of a fixture as it might have been earlier on in the season, I guess. And they've also got Man United in Gameweek 28, which I think right now, based on how they're playing, is a good fixture. You know, Man United have just lost to Fulham in the FA Cup. They are genuinely like a bottom mid-table Premier League team at the moment, in my mind. And then they got Fulham in Gameweek 30. I might wildcard then. To be honest, I'll probably keep Gabriel on my wildcard if I do, but you know, you get the picture. And then we got Guardiola, which is an interesting one because it certainly looks like Guardiola could potentially have a double game week in Game Week 33. So I guess, well, if I'm wildcarding, I suppose I could bring in Gabriel and wildcard him out and bring in Guardiola if the double game week's looking likely. Because, you know, I like Guardiola in terms of his attacking output. I mean, genuinely, every game I see Man City play, Guardiola genuinely has a chance of scoring a goal. But you could probably say the same with Gabriel from set pieces. And also, I definitely still back the Arsenal defence ahead of the Liverpool one. I'd probably back them ahead of the Liverpool one, actually. But I definitely back the Arsenal defence ahead of the Man City one. So yeah, with all that in mind, I'm probably going to go Hall to Gabriel. Now, I could just not make that transfer and start Aina against Man City at home. But the thought of having two Nottingham Forest defenders against Man City at home is a bit too, I don't know. It feels like a bit too much of a risk for me at the moment. So I'll probably just go for Sells in goal and then transferring Gabriel, bench Aina. Also, at the moment, I'm assuming that Isak is not going to be fit for Game Week 28. So he's on my bench there at the moment. If he is confirmed fit or we get any kind of intel that he should start Game Week 28, then my plans kind of change, at least in terms of what I'm going to do with my forward line. But yeah, right now he's on my bench. My defence is going to look like this. I'm going to go for Sells, who I don't think has, you know, there's any risk of him not starting. But I do think with Trent, I don't know, just with the fixture congestion that Liverpool have at the moment, obviously they're playing Champions League, FA Cup, it's all, you know, a pretty full-on schedule. And you think of the difficulty of fixtures that they have, the easiest one over the last week is probably this Southampton game. So if there was ever to be a time where Liverpool rotate a little bit, it could be against Southampton, particularly obviously at Anfield, the fact they're 11 points clear of the league, etc. So I am a little bit worried that Liverpool do rotate and Trent doesn't start. Exactly who comes in to replace him, I'm not sure, because I think Bradley's injured at the moment. I'm pretty sure Gomez is out as well, so maybe Trent stays in the team just because Liverpool don't have much of a squad in that position at the moment. But yeah, a little bit worried about that. And then I think I'm just going to have to start Robinson against Brighton at home. And then come Game Week 29, I think we're going to have to get rid of Trent, sell him for someone. Aina can come in because he's got Ipswich. I'm actually quite looking forward to Game Week 29 with double Forest defence. I'm not sure all that many teams still have double Forest defence. So the thought of, you know, double Forest defence against Ipswich on the blank game week is quite a nice place to be. And then I've got Robinson against Tottenham, who, yeah, I'll probably bench in 29, and then my replacement for Trent will start instead, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's how my defence is looking. So we spoke a little bit earlier about Morgan Rogers. I think largely my midfield's going to stay the same for Game Week 28, but I'm on the fence as to, well, I'd say I'm not on the fence as making a transfer in Game Week 28, but it's in terms of what I do with my team in 29. And I think the natural replacements for me in order to get rid of Rodgers would be to bring in a Bournemouth midfielder. I would say, I don't know, I feel like the Bournemouth form has dropped off a little bit, but these guys are still looking fairly dangerous. And, well, there have always been three to pick from, right? You've got Semenyo, Kluivert and Dango. I've already got Semenyo in my team, so I obviously can't buy him. Dango at the moment, I think he's great when he plays, but I do think of the three, his minutes are probably going to be the most reduced now. When Zabani got sent off I've said this in loads of my videos, but when Zabani got sent off, Dango was sacrificed and moved to left wing back. And in the last Premier League game, when Evan Nilsson came on, obviously the Bournemouth actual centre forward, Dango was the one substituted off. So I do think probably the one to bring in for me right now is Kluivert, and I shouldn't really consider Dango as an option. So I think come Game Week 29, I'm looking at Rodgers to Kluivert. But for Game Week 28 though, I don't see the need to make a transfer yet. Rodgers has got Brentford, which I think is actually quite a good fixture. Although I'm looking at the Champions League schedule tonight, just a couple hours after this video goes out, he's going to play Bruges away in the Champions League. And we all know that Aston Villa are, well, they're a bit weaker when they play the weekend after a Champions League game, right? And obviously anything can happen in that game to Rodgers. So if he gets injured, I'll probably have this video deleted, to be honest, by the time if that happens. But Yeah, I think with the the information we have at the moment, I think I should probably start Rodgers against Brentford. And I know he scored in his last game, but still, I think in his last 5 or 6 Premier League games, barring, I think it was Ipswich they played, wasn't it, where he could have scored a couple of goals. Barring that game, I think he's put up less than 0.2 XGI in literally all of his last 5 games. So he's not been all that effective, but I just think with the bigger sort of problems I have in my team, I'm probably going to start Rodgers. The rest of the midfield 4 kind of pick themselves, really. Southampton against, Salah against Southampton, Palmer against Leicester, and Mbumo, who's obviously got Villa. I think that Aston Villa-Brentford game should have some goals in it. Although previously, I think, did Brentford play Tottenham? And Tottenham actually kept a clean sheet against Brentford, which was a surprise to me. So you can never say this game is guaranteed to have goals. But yeah, I do think Mbumo against Villa is a good player to have for a good fixture. I'm happy to start Semenyo against Tottenham. And like I said, just bearing in mind, at the moment, I'm assuming Isak isn't fit to play. So assuming that Isak isn't fit to play, I need to think about a striker to bring in because I have Cunha, who is definitely a transfer out. Then I've got Isak, who probably isn't a transfer out for Game Week 28. Could be for Game Week 29, but I've got too much money tied up in him. So I think I'll just bench him through and hope that he comes back for sort of Game Week 30, 31 time. The problem is the rest of the forwards to pick from are not all that exciting. You got Haaland there, who I can only really get if I sacrifice Cole Palmer, and I don't want to sell, not this week at least. I do not want to sell, just go back to the midfield. I do not want to sell Cole Palmer ahead of playing Leicester at home. So it leaves me with basically, well, let's just go back. It leaves me with 0.3 million to, 7.3 million if I were to sell Cunha to buy another striker. And looking at who's available here for 7.3 million, I've got 2 options really. Well, maybe 3. Wissa, Marmoush, and Beto. Now, Beto, there's a bit of a running meme I've seen on FPL Fran's Twitter account, which has been really funny, that all roads lead to bringing Beto into your team. The thought of having Beto into my team genuinely gives me shivers. But looking at his fixtures, what's that? Wolves and West Ham, 28-29. And then you definitely get rid of him ahead of Game Week 30, right? So those 2 fixtures that I'd probably actually need him for are pretty good. But there is a kind of risk that I don't wildcard in 30 and I have to start Beto ahead of Liverpool. So I'm a little bit worried about that. I could go for Marmoush. He's got Forest away, Brighton and Leicester in his next 3. I just think bringing a player in ahead of playing Forest away, not sure I want to do that. And then we got Wissa. I think I'm going to go for Wissa basically. His fixtures are not amazing either. I don't think there's any real massively exciting options in the game, to be honest, at striker position. But I think of the 3 I mentioned, I prefer Wissa. I think for the next couple of fixtures, he could be pretty decent. I am a little bit worried, though, to be fair, about that Bournemouth away fixture. Because, Bournemouth have been pretty solid defensively for at least the sort of middle part of the season. But I just think you compare the 3 that we were looking at, and if I go for Marmoush as well, I'm left with basically absolutely nothing in the bank to deal with my team for Game Week 30 and 31. So, yeah, I think I prefer Wissa. So, 2 transfers. I'm going to do Hall to Gabriel, start Gabriel, bench Aina, and I'm going to do Cunha to Wissa, bench Isak. Usually I spend a little bit of time talking about who I'm going to captain because it's a relatively close decision most weeks, but unless we get any sort of sniff that Liverpool are going to rotate, and even if they do rotate, I don't think they're going to rotate Salah. I mean, you've got Salah against Southampton at home, Palmer against Leicester at home. Those are the 2 that you could consider captaining. But just based on current form, I just don't think there's any reason to captain someone that isn't Salah this week. He's got a game at home against possibly the worst team in Premier League history. I've had more negative comments than that in my comment section about Southampton and from Southampton fans. There's just no question, is there? So yeah, this is how my team's going to look. Sells, Trent, Gabriel, Robinson, Salah as my captain, Palmer, Mbumo, Semenyo, Rodgers, Wissa and Wood. And fingers crossed for no Champions League disasters. Alright, well that's the end of the video. Apologies if I sound a little bit under the weather. That's because I actually am. I did my race on Sunday and then I just felt absolutely terrible after it. I think my body was like building itself up to that race while I was carrying something. And as soon as it was over, it decided to be actually ill. So I actually had the day off work yesterday as well. I didn't do anything for YouTube. I didn't do anything for work. I just monged out in my bedroom basically yesterday. So apologies for not sounding all that great. Apologies for the red nose. I've been blowing my nose like a madman because, yeah, I'm not very well. So just Just have to put up with the red nose again. Yeah, enough about me. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. Yeah, if there's anything that you think I should do with my team that I haven't spoken about here, I'd be interested to hear it in the comments. You know, I don't never claim to be an FPL expert, so I really value when people actually have constructive thoughts on my FPL team. So if you actually have something to suggest for me, then yeah, I'd be interested to hear that in the comments. I think that's everything. If you enjoyed the video, like I said, please leave a like rating. I don't know if I said that already. I don't know. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it. And if you haven't already and want to see more content from me, you can subscribe. Should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you on my next video.